So one of the key things which I personally have found is a lot of founders being optimizing for tokens on the get-go. I would say that like that's probably like the not the right approach. Like the right approach is just how you try to solve problems in Web2, which is talk to the users, try to figure out the problems that they want a solution to right now, rather than trying to create things to launch a token.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with WAGMI Ventures. On today's episode, we have Rohan Agarwal, co-founder and CEO of Cypherock. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting founders from across Web3. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with Rohan Agarwal. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here today with Rohan Agarwal, co-founder and CEO of Cypherock. Rohan, how's it going today?
It's been great, Tanner. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm pumped to chat. So before we really dig into all the cool work happening at Cypherock, could you tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you to what you're building?
Sure. So this is more around 2017. I've been still in a university in India, trying to complete my undergrad engineering degree. Worked at a bunch of places, doing Android development work, doing open source work. And you know how 2017 was, right? Like that was the time when one of the biggest bull runs we have ever seen so far. That was sort of started playing around. And so it caught my attention essentially, what are these ICOs? What is Ethereum? And so that's probably the time I personally went into the rabbit hole. I still remember a hackathon that we went to around 2017 January. Ethereum at that point was $21, right? And so we went to the hackathon. We said we'll build something on Ethereum. The developer ecosystem was not that great at that point, I would say, compared to now. But we said we will try to build something. So we did end up building something, and Ethereum was $21. So that was my biggest surprise moment. And because usually for a human, traditionally it's been that value has only been tangible so far. So I personally was like, who is paying $21 for something digital? This doesn't make sense, right? But I was the same person who bought Ethereum at $250 6 months down the line, right? So that was my start into crypto. And 2017, we decided to the best way to learn about the space is to actually have skin in the game. So whatever money that we had sort of earned through various internships, freelancing work, we put all in to investing, trading crypto. And, there's a old saying that goes everyone is a genius in a bull market. It's when the bear market hits that, you realize you're not a true genius. And so we made a bunch of money in the bull market, 3x, 5x our money. But then January 2018 came, and that's when we lost most of our portfolio. And we decided, we are not geniuses. It's much better to work on the core technology aspects of it rather than speculating on these assets, which we have no control over. So both me and my co-founders, I am more from the software background, done bunch of software, backend Android work in the past. My co-founder, he's more from the hardware and the security background, worked in partnership with Lockheed Martin before. Was the first employee at Nimble Labs, which is a food robotics startup based out of India. So we both decided that, we want to go full-time working in the space and try to solve problems in the space, which we as founders could uniquely solve with our own unique skill sets. And the number one problem that we found out was self-custody, to be honest. Because what we realized was self-custody still had those fundamental problems that people were not comfortable with dealing in crypto. I mean, think about it. One is your core security issues. Like you have these hacks which happen almost on monthly basis, which sort of deters new users from coming in. And even if we specifically talk about crypto wallets in general, we realize there were some fundamental core wallet problems that need to be fixed before you know, crypto could become, you know, could be mass adopted. um the reason why we decided to do it was pretty clear to us, which is we realized that exchanges at that point, and even today, I would say, has a lot of mind share in Web3. And if that continues over time, what we believe is the exchanges will have sort of the bank same sort of regulations that the banking industry has today. And it has in fact already started happening with, you know, SEC trying to stop Coinbase from issuing, you know, interest to their users on the assets stored, and, you know, things along those lines. So we realize that, you know, the exchanges will have the same set of regulations that the banking industry has today. And so if that continues, like, you know, Web3 will itself be the same old fintech or finance 2.0, which we already have today. Like self custody is actually one of the biggest differences we have between the traditional finance and the finance which is enabled through Web3. And so we realize that, you know, self custody needs to scale up for the masses, for this industry to actually, you know, hit it off the ground. And so when it comes to crypto wallets, we realized there was some fundamental issues with that. So the number one problem we found out was seed phrases. Like, you know, if you know, buy a wallet today, if you maybe download it, like a software wallet, like every wallet today comes up with this seed phrase, which doesn't make sense, because even if your, you know, wallet is secure, but if your seed phrases are not secure, your wallet security is of no use. And like a lot of security of your wallet depends on the seed phrase being secured in the first place. So it's like if someone else took your seed phrase, they have the power to take out your funds without your authorization, right? So we felt that this user behavior um, does not allow Web3 to actually be mass adopted, because a lot of wrong could happen. And we have already seen recently with Slope wallets, if you heard about them, the Solana wallet, which got hacked because the seed phrases were sort of sent to the servers in plain text, and that's how the hackers got hacked, you know, sort of hack the user's assets. So we realized that seed phrase sort of need to go away for, you know, most of the users, because most of the users are not technical enough to judge the criticality of it. So that was one. Secondly, we realized that, you know, most of the wallets today, like almost all of them, even if we talk about hardware wallets in general, have been hacked before. So if you take the example of the top two most popular wallets, they have been hacked before, and most of the people don't realize it. So what we realized from first principles, that everything is hackable in the world, because there's no system that can be made 100% secure. And like a fundamental difference with Web3 wallets is that your private key is not only your access, it's actually your asset, right? Like if you see, private keys are not something which is new to Web3, like it's been used in Web2 as well. But the core difference is in Web2, the private keys that were used were essentially revocable, right? Because those were, you know, used to access certain sensitive data, but those were revocable by servers, because that's how the architecture is currently in Web2. But when it comes to Web3, your private keys are not just your access points, but they are in fact your assets itself. And if they get lost, if that gets stolen, that means your assets are lost as well. So it required a fundamentally new approach to think the custody as well as the security of the private keys differently from Web2. And so if we talk about the current hardware wallets, they have been hacked before. So what we realized was, since even these hardware wallets have been hacked, the only way to secure these private keys is to never store them in a single place. So if you don't have a single point of failure in the private key storage, even if our hardware is hacked, that does not mean your private key is hacked. So that was the second realization that we had. And the third realization we had is that in order for crypto to succeed as an asset class, we still haven't figured out the inheritance of crypto as an asset, right? Like if you consider physical assets like your real estate, cash, stocks, cash in the bank account, the governments and the bank for a specific jurisdiction take care of the inheritance of those assets. But when it comes to crypto assets, the problem is you cannot give your keys while you're alive, because hypothetically speaking, what if the other person, had a fight with you and they ran away with the funds, right? So you cannot give your keys while you're alive. And for obvious reasons, you cannot give your keys after you're dead, because in some sense you're already dead. So the fundamental question then comes in: when do you transfer these keys? How do you transfer it? And how do you make sure that the privacy and the control of the assets are maintained throughout? Which so far no one has been able to, give a workable solution to, and that's what we are trying to do at Cypherock.
Got it. Love it. Okay. So how would you describe Cypherock to those who are unfamiliar? So that's kind of a lot of the context, I guess I would say. If you're kind of just, you meet someone and they're asking, hey, what are you working on? What's your answer to that?
Right. So like for a person who is, familiar with crypto, I would say like we are building a hardware wallet without a seed phrase. But someone who is not familiar with crypto, usually how I try to explain is just like you have gold. So there's two ways to keep your gold. One is you keep it in a bank locker and they are responsible for, securing it, although they don't do a good job of it, traditional banks. But that's one way. And the other way, which how most of the users do it today, is essentially self-custody their own gold in their vaults, in their homes, in their, secret locations, however they want to sort of self-custody those gold. Similarly, with crypto assets, it's like, not only you can sort of custody those with an exchange, but you can also self-custody it. And so Cypherock provides you like sort of the safest vault to keep those assets secure. So it's like a personal Fort Knox for your crypto assets.
Love it. Okay. So let's go back to 2019. What were some of the early challenges and how did you and your team think about solving for those?
Right. So, I mean, I would say like the earliest challenge for us was how do we build, the exact product? Because like we realized what the problems were the users were facing, but it had to be solved with a hardware based solution, and we were not able to find the right kind of hardware UX that would support this sort of solution. So we had to go through like multiple iterations on the hardware front, on the chip level side. So we had to experiment with the different vendors who could provide these solutions, because back in the day, like a lot of things were not, I would say, like crypto hadn't caught that much with the traditional industries, which is so different today, I would say. And so we had to like do a lot of innovations on the hardware front, not just on the software side of things, before we could give the right UX to the users, for a solution like this. So like for a user, it's essentially like how do we build like a off-chain multisig like solution, but that supports all of your crypto. And so we realized this was like a solution like this, even though you can do it theoretically as a software based solution on your smartphones, but we realized that people were not going to use it for storing their most of their crypto assets, at least. And so we realized we had to have this solution in the form of a secure hardware. And so the biggest challenge for us was like, how do we get that right hardware based UX to actually solve this?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about how users are able to use Cypherock to secure secure their seed phrase for other wallets too? Where my understanding is that it's essentially like a forgot password button for Web3. So I'd love to learn more about that.
Sure. So let me back it up a little bit. So if you see like today's wallets, how they are structured is like you have a master private key, which is like your root key, which drives all of your different private keys for different coins. So maybe one private key for your Bitcoin, another one for Ethereum. All of those private keys are generated from a master private key, and that is essentially what is sort of stored inside your maybe it's a hardware wallet, maybe it's a software wallet that you use, maybe a MetaMask, so far and so forth. And then you have to maintain a copy of that in the form of seed phrase that you have to write it down on a piece of paper. And that's where most of the attack vector comes in, because that's essentially like your private keys on a piece of paper. If someone gets access to that seed phrase, your funds are gone. What we do differently here is we remove the seed phrase from the equation altogether. We said we will not use the seed phrase at all. We take that master private key and we sort of decentralize it further using something called as cryptographic threshold schemes into 5 parts. So 5 parts being one device, which is similar to your ledger, your treasure, or any other hardware wallet that you typically use. And then 4 of these cards, which are, I would say, has the same security as that of your debit cards or credit cards that you use. So same secure hardware, but a different software that runs inside these. So once you buy the product, you get this one device and 4 cards, and this happens on your end. It's not something we pre-generated for you. So it's typically like any other hardware wallet, wherein your private key gets generated, it gets decentralized into the device and the 4 cards, which you sort of distribute into remote geographical locations. But the best part is, whenever you want to make a transaction, you don't need to fetch all of the 5 parts. You just need to fetch the device and any one of the card to make a transaction.
Got it. That's super interesting. Okay, so what's jumped out as most interesting or surprising along the journey of building Cypherock?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like the most surprising aspect for us was that, I mean, initially we thought that we might have a lot of time convincing users about the usage of the product, because it's a new user behavior, right? Like there hasn't been like a product like this in the market before. And what we have done is we have sort of, so typically if you see like other wallets are more like wallets where you have one seed phrase, we have sort of structured this product out as a vault, which is like you can have multiple wallets in the same product, which is like the closest analogy is like, how do you have multiple Google accounts on your browser, right? So you can, store the seed phrase of your MetaMask in wallet 1 on the same product, by the way. You can store ledger seed phrase in wallet 2. You can maybe generate a new wallet inside Cypherock. So the biggest surprise for us was that people were actually open to sort of using it because it solved a very fundamental problem for them. So we realized that one of the core reasons why people were buying our product was not because they were trying to use our product, but because they said that they have used hardware wallets before, and they said that they know how daunting it is to sort of manage that seed phrase, and they would not recommend those hardware wallets to someone who is a little less technical, maybe someone in their family members, in their friends. So they actually bought our wallet to be able to give that sort of experience to someone who is a little more non-technical, which sort of expands the market of hardware wallet, altogether. And so that became like that came as a lot of surprise to us, that people who were buying our products were not buying it for themselves, but actually to, allow users who are less technical to get into Web3.
Love it. Yeah. So I'm curious, what do you think are some maybe second order effects of better security for your crypto assets? So like, I'm curious specifically, like what else changes in the world if this becomes kind of a given or expected thing through Cypherock?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, Tanner. So, while we started building out the product, we actually initially thought that we were building sort of the safest hardware wallet. But we soon realized that, we are not building just a hardware wallet here. this is a new way to sort of secure your private keys. And fortunately, private keys are not just a problem in Web3, but there are other applications of private keys, used, industry wise in cryptography and security. And so what we realized was the people who bought our product, number one, they asked us, hey, this is great for storing my crypto assets, but can I store my other sensitive information as well in the similar security? So they said, I want to store my passphrases. I want to store my the master key to my password manager. Then there is, in fact, a certificate authority. Like they basically give out these SSL certificates to websites, right? So he wanted to use our product to secure the private to that the private key which gives those certificates to websites. So we realized that, like the product that we are building, it's actually a new infrastructure to manage any private key, because the kind of way we have architected this out, it's not only blockchain agnostic, but it's actually information agnostic as well. So that was like the fundamental realization, or the second order effect that we realized. The second thing we realized was that for all of your physical assets, as we discussed, your banking, like your bank and the government take care of your physical assets inheritance. But there has not been a solution yet for even non crypto digital assets like your passwords, your other private keys, your sensitive information. There's a reason why people haven't been, like gravitated themselves towards a cloud-based solution to this, because you have to trust that cloud provider a lot, which is just not possible specifically for this kind of sensitive information like your passwords. And so what we realized was, hey, if we can build this solution out for your crypto assets, I think we'll be able to provide a general purpose digital asset inheritance service for all of your digital assets and not just cryptocurrencies, which sort of expands the market beyond just the Web3 native users, I would say.
Super interesting. Yeah. Okay. So help us solidify the case for why using Cypherock would be a good idea. And maybe I'm curious if we could do it by asking, like, what are the most compelling criticisms of the product and how would you address those? And I ask mainly because I personally see things often kind of in terms of trade-offs. So like, what would your best critics be saying you're trading off in order to make Cypherock possible?
Yeah, I would say like what we are trading off here is a little convenience, because if you see with other wallets, like you have a single hardware wherein the private keys are kept, and that is somewhat, I would say, like a little easier. In our case, it's like you have to have a hardware and a tapping of the card. So the tap of the card, I would say, is the trade-off of the UX compared to any other wallet. But at the same time, like, you don't need to manage your seed phrase, which is both a value add in terms of security and UX for the user, which I think makes up a lot of it for them. Because we see a lot of folks who sort of got into Web3 in the 2021 year, like, because they didn't have the sort of technical know-hows of managing the seed phrase, a lot of them actually got phished. A lot of NFTs were phished because they just gave away their seed phrases to random strangers on the internet without understanding the complications. Whereas on our product, it's like, you can still view your seed phrase, by the way. It's not that you can't do it. It's not that we are trying to gatekeep anything through our product. But if you're ever trying to view your seed phrase through the product, it has this sort of education feedback loop wherein you will be first be notified saying, hey, if you try to view this and give it to someone, make sure that you're giving it to someone you trust, because they can have complete control of your assets.
Right.
So this sort of education loop, I would say, helps a lot of new users be invested and be involved in the Web3 without caring too much about the technical know-hows of how a wallet operates, I would say.
Love it. Yeah. Okay, so I've got two last questions here, but even actually before that, I guess one interesting component to this story is that you've been audited by Key Labs, the security firm that hacked Ledger, I believe, around 3 years ago.
That's correct.
Can you talk a little bit about what that audit consisted of and how that all worked?
Sure, Tanner. So, I mean, while we were trying to build the product, we said, this is a fairly new way to keep your assets. Like no one has attempted this before. And so we want a firm who has actually been probably like the biggest hardware wallet security firm ever to actually audit it, right? Like until unless they say that this is secure, like how would anyone else treat this as secure?
Sure,
So
yeah.
so we built out our source code, we open sourced it, we went to them saying, hey, you have been so instrumental in the space, you guys have had the top two hardware wallets before, we want you guys to audit it, right? And they said like, yeah, we are happy to do an independent audit. They said this is super interesting. So they did a independent audit. It took almost like 2 to 3 months, and they gave us a final audit report saying that this wallet has so many sort of innovative features that they have never seen in any wallet before. And so they authorized it, saying that there was no sort of critical issues found, and if there were any sort of minor issues found, those were all sort of patched by us before being released to the customer. So that really, I would say, helped boost the wallet security to the community in general, so that the community itself can just like rely on not just rely on our word, but can also rely on their word to being able to see that our wallet is in fact secure. So just to give a little context about them to the listeners, so Key Labs, they actually, they were like one of the few hardware security firms that have hacked or discovered vulnerabilities in Ledger and Treasure before. They basically played, like, I don't know if you remember, there was a snake game that used to come on like the older phones, older
Sure,
Nokia
yeah.
phones. And so they actually played that game on the Ledger device, right? So that's
funny.
how, yeah, that's how, that's how smart they are in terms of what they do. And so that's why we went ahead and said, if we are ever going to get the audit, we have to get it from them to be able to say firmly that, whatever security claims that we are making here are actually genuine and not something, fuss. And once that was done, the community was open to using the product more. And now within like 2 months of launch, we got like $1 million in AUM stored through different Cypherock wallets globally.
Love it. Okay. Rohan, so 2 last questions here. First question, what is your most generalizable advice for founders building in the Web3 space, kind of based on your unique vantage point, your unique story?
Yeah, so one of the key things which I personally have found is a lot of founders being optimizing for tokens on the get-go. I would say that like that's probably like not the right approach. Like the right approach is just how you try to solve problems in Web2, which is talk to the users, try to figure out the problems that they want a solution to right now, rather than trying to create things to launch a token, I would say. So yeah, I mean, crypto, it's still, I would say, pretty nascent. It still requires a lot of problem fixing at the infrastructure level. And so it's much better to optimize for solving user problems rather than trying to optimize for, token economics at this point, at least for the earlier stage founders.
Love it. Yeah. Okay. So what is your team working on right now, and what's the best way for people to follow along on the journey?
Sure. So we launched the product already. It's been live since the past, I would say, 2 to 4 months now, already in production. We have got most of the top coins supported. So you have the Bitcoin forks like Litecoin, Dogecoin. Then you have Ethereum and all of the EVM chains. Even Solana and Near are already supported. The next step for us is to actually, which we are already in the process of, is supporting the inheritance protocol natively, which allows users to sort of inherit their assets without a single point of failure and without compromising the privacy and control of the assets, as well as being able to integrate our product with different sort of wallets and dApps out there. In terms of finding us, yeah, you can, you can find us on the website. You can order it today. It's cypherock.com, cypherock.com. And you can find me personally on Twitter. Like that's the best way to reach me. My Twitter handle is Rohan Agarwal 94.
Love it. Rohan, thank you so much for the time. This was awesome. And I'm excited to see all the cool stuff that's going to be happening over the coming weeks and months. So have a great start to your week here.
Likewise, Tanner. Thanks for having me.